first of all, I would like to say greetings to everybody. Brother Shakra, I'm actually in the UAE.
Excuse me, sorry. Sorry, it's Saudi Arabia, ain't it? Sorry.
That's fine, that's fine.
Yes.
So I'd like to say greetings and good evening. Right now, the time is approaching 10 o'clock here, so I'm kind of glad that you've actually put me on at this time. My name is Ari Maat, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Black Economic Collective, EMA. EMA stands for Europe, Middle East, Africa, and the Americas. So today, I want to speak with you all. The presentation, I'm going to be quite fluid in relation to this presentation, because I would like to kind of explain or tell the background story and what influenced the Black Economic Collective. And I feel that sometimes when we see and hear about these renowned women, I think sometimes we need to hear about the journey that they've undertaken as to why they are who they are. I would like to also acknowledge the women here today. I would like to acknowledge the presenters, both the brothers and the sisters. With the brothers, you know, you are as important as us as the sisters. Without us, there's no you. Without you, there's no us. So what I would like to do is go through my presentation, but what I would like to do is kind of talk around it as well. And then maybe towards the end, if there's any questions anybody would like to ask, I will take those questions as well. So just a little bit about me, just to kind of set the scene. I'm an international development consultant, a businesswoman born in London, Jamaican parentage and African heritage. I lived and worked in Saudi Arabia, and now I reside in the UAE. I have over 20 years experience in education, youth, business, community development within the UK, Middle East, Africa, and the Caribbean. For those of you who know me, I'm also the presenter of the Black Economic Show, and also the co-founder of the Tree of Eternal Life, an African holistic store based in the UK. I'm also a mother, a wife, a daughter, an aunt. For me, those titles are very significant because those titles have made me who I am. So before I actually go into what is the Black Economic Collective, I just want to sort of tell a little story first. I know I don't have that much time, but I feel that this will sort of kind of lay the foundation as to why myself and two other beautiful sisters came about in relation to this particular initiative. I'm going to particularly tell you about my story, but within that story, there is going to be how we actually connected in a region in the Middle East. So my story started 5 years ago, and it was a time where the Brit exit referendum, there was a lot of uncertainty within the UK. Those of you who also know me, I was also the CEO of the Global Institute for Entrepreneurship. We were doing a lot of work with the African diaspora in the UK at that time. Our focus was entrepreneurship, inclusive entrepreneurship, looking at entrepreneurship as a way of social engagement, but also looking at the do for self. You know, many people at that time was experiencing redundancy. There's a lot of uncertainty in the UK, and entrepreneurship, business and enterprise was the way forward for many. So I developed along with my team within the GIE initiative to develop a lot of workshops, events, promoting entrepreneurship. However, there was a bit of a curveball for me and my team. So during that period, a lot of the initiatives that we had developed, we worked very closely with local authorities in terms of initiatives for setting up businesses, social enterprise and charity. At that point, we lost money. We lost our contracts. So basically, you know, the pictures here kind of show you the mindset or the journey or the approaches that I had to take to solve a particular problem. So basically, there was a point in time when I remember sitting in my office and I was like, what am I going to do next? You know, as I mentioned before, I'm a mother, a wife. You know, it's you know, me and my husband, we work very, very closely together. And it was a case where he's also self-employed and I was self-employed. So then what do we do? So one day an opportunity came my way, and that opportunity was in the form of teaching abroad. So one door closes, another door opens. So we discussed what we, you know, the opportunity, you know, is, well, the Middle East was never on my radar. I never even thought about the Middle East. My focus, or our focus, was always Africa. However, due to circumstances, it became an option, you could say. So, however, I received a contract for the Middle East, for the UAE. Actually, I didn't get it, but my agency gave me another opportunity to Saudi Arabia. Now, those of you who know Saudi Arabia or you know of the inequalities within that region, especially for women, will say, why Saudi Arabia? Now, I had to think long and hard with my husband about this, but circumstances kind of dictated, and so with that, I went for an interview. Now, this is the thing about it, and this is where we come to fear. Now, false evidence appearing real. Sometimes opportunities come your way, and you don't even realize it's an opportunity until you've actually gone through this. So Saudi Arabia was on the table. I went to the interview. They, you know, the interviewed me. Put it this way: within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I had a ticket to Saudi Arabia. What was I doing in Saudi Arabia? Even at the airport, I was crying. The fear of going somewhere. Because you hear stories about going to Saudi Arabia, and it's just like, well, what am I doing here? But to cut a long story short, I ended up in Saudi Arabia for going on 2.5 years. It was actually one of the best experiences that I've had in my life up to that point. It allowed me to see another world.
Hi there.
It allowed me to see another world. Yeah. And I heard somebody within the audience mention about connecting with others in the diaspora. Now, going to somewhere like Saudi Arabia, now when you see Saudi Arabia on social media, on the internet, you're not expecting to see anybody like me there. However, moving to Saudi Arabia during that period, there are so many of us from the UK, from the Caribbean, from America, from the Africas. We were in Saudi Arabia. We're there working. We're there for a reason. We're there for our families. We're there to save. Some people were there to develop business. Some people were there for their pension pot. Now, going to the migrant mindset. Now, being out of, or you're living in another country, your mindset actually changes. You know, you're in a place where it's anytime anybody can say goodbye. But people were there, and they were there for survival. They were there to know that they're not going to be there forever, but they need to make as much money, do as much as they can, and then move out. Now, that migrant mindset reminded me so much of my grandparents when they first came to the UK. It didn't really resonate to me what they achieved as that migrant mindset, because we knew those who were living in Saudi Arabia at that time, that wasn't our home, but we had a plan. Wherever we came from wasn't giving us what we needed at that point in time. So even being there, we actually connected naturally because we had the same common goal, we had things in common, even though we were not from the same place of origin, but we actually naturally connected. And to this day, I have friends that live in Saudi Arabia to this day, and others who have moved back home, but we still have that bond and we still have that connection. So that migrant mindset sort of let me kind of think now about my life in the UK. And sometimes I just feel that, you know, we're a bit comfortable. We sometimes don't seem to take risks because we're kind of comfortable. But the Brexit referendum, and we are now approaching the exit in Europe. We have to have a totally different mindset now in the UK. Living abroad has really given me that pioneering spirit, that migrant spirit, that we're here to do something and then we move on. But the beauty for me about living somewhere like Saudi Arabia, you get the opportunity to see another world. Because in a place like Saudi Arabia, I'm going to move on to the UAE in a moment, because that is a different story in itself. But what I will say that is you get an opportunity to see how other communities live. In Saudi Arabia, you have a lot of Pakistanis, a lot of Indians, you have the local peoples there themselves. And they have a bond, they have a connection. And sometimes I sit in awe and watch how they are. They have a culture, they have a way of life. And the migrant communities there, they stick together no matter what. They build, a lot of the businesses that you will see in this particular region are not even by the local Saudi Arabians or those who are born there. They're actually migrants. They will pool their resources together. They will do whatever it takes to do business there. And then you know what happens? The money goes back home, and the money goes home to build. So, just looking on that, it's like, but why can't we achieve that? For some of us, not all of us, I'm sort of sweeping statement, but why can't some of us achieve that in the UK? And I just think that maybe sometimes it's how we think and how we approach. We have too many divisions. We have too many reasons why we cannot come together. So going to another place, seeing a different way of life, it actually helped me to recalibrate myself. I had to go inwards. I had to think about all those years being in the UK, how, my mindset, how I related to people, how I saw myself as a Black woman, how I saw myself as an African woman. Because when you go to somewhere like Saudi Arabia, they're not looking at you as English. They're not looking at you as Jamaican. They're looking at you as African. That's how they see you, as African. Now, the difference with myself, and you will say that there's a in terms of how they treat our people. Now, there is definitely a caste system there. Now, for various reasons, I'm not going to go too much into that. And those who's been to the Middle East will understand why I say what I'm saying. However, it made me kind of realize, that our Africanness, when you come out of somewhere like the UK, is very different. The African experience outside of the UK is very, very different. But the beautiful thing about being outside with others from different parts of the world who consider themselves those from the African diaspora, it gives us the opportunity to sit down and talk, to sit down and ask questions, to break those barriers. There's stereotypes about those from the Caribbean or those from America or those from Europe, or it's even to this day people still can't they can't connect my Africanness via Europe because they don't understand the history. So then it's our opportunity to represent when we're in the diaspora, to break down our history, our culture, and it's beautiful because you're coming from different perspectives. You've got those from the Americas that have their story. You've got those from Europe that have their story. You have those from the continent that have their story. And then it's come then for us to connect and come together and to understand the viewpoints from each other. That's where the richness is. Now, the thing is about the Middle East now, there are, when I talk about recalibrate it, your mind goes around, there's so much opportunities, because I'll be honest with you, when I was in the UK, I couldn't even get a loan for 50 pence. I couldn't even, the banks wouldn't even talk to me. The banks wouldn't even entertain me. So the point I was saying here is, you know, there are some people that gives many reasons and many excuses as to why they cannot work abroad or why they can't even move or even entertain it. So the whole thing about fear, sometimes when I speak to people over here, and it's, you know, as you know, they want to, you know, this whole thing about with exit, you know, in regards to that conversation, you know, they want us out, they want us to go back home. And the thing is, it's quite funny, because do they really? But then at the same time, some of us should take up the opportunity, because when you leave the UK, when you leave London, it's a different world, a different opportunity. But don't get me wrong, there are challenges there, but it's a different type of challenge. But the beautiful thing is who you are able to connect with. It's that power of that connection. So I was in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, for going on 2.5 years. Unfortunately, where I was working at that point didn't renew the contract because they had a different focus. But during that period, another opportunity came my way in the UAE. Now, I loved Saudi so much, I didn't want to go. It was, you know, where I was living, it was very cosmopolitan. It was by the sea, the food was fresh, there's so much opportunity, it was beautiful. But my time had ended. Now, again, one door closes, another door opens. And again, when I was leaving to go to UAE, I wasn't really fussed. I just packed a few things in my suitcase. My husband was looking at me, he goes, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "I don't really want to go, I want to stay in Saudi." So anyway, I ended up in the UAE. A friend of mine, who's also the co-founder of the Black Economic Collective, she was living in that region for going on, I think, 20 years at that point in time. So she saw that region build from the sand. So going over to UAE was another experience in itself. And, you know, somebody mentioned about, you know, how people perceive us, those in the diaspora. Going into the UAE, you know, there is abundance. There is so much abundance. People are in tech, they're in fashion, they're in retail, they're in the corporations. You know, we're doing so much fantastic things in the Middle East. It's just amazing. You know, sometimes when I go home, I'm like, why can't you be? But again, when I go home, I realize what sometimes the UK is actually doing to us. You know, it's you know, just growing up, the challenges sometimes, and that's why, you know, when I talk about our narrative, is sometimes you have to choose what you want to do on your own terms. And I just feel that one of the reasons why I also left the UK is there was too many challenges, too many hurdles, too many things to jump through, too many things to prove to yourself, to other people, that again, when you go out into the world, your as I said, you recalibrate, your narrative change, your view of the world totally changes. And it's quite liberating. You know, it's when the mind is liberated in such a way, and you're so infused and everybody around you is exactly the same, magic can happen, things can happen. And one of the things that happened for me while I was in the UAE, I mean, this actually go back a little bit further. It was when I went to the UAE, I was actually still for a while. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but if I was going to do something, it had to be with like-minded people. No matter where I am in the world, no matter where I work in the world, my heart is always in Africa. My heart is always for the liberation of people. My heart is always, what can we do differently? What can we do to you know, to help us to raise, to do all the things that, you know, was mentioned earlier on that we used to do historically. So I had a conversation with a friend of mine while, you know, we were both looking at the global disturbance that was taking place, the whole Black Lives Matter and all these, you know, the killings. And it's like, well, you know, what can we do? You know, it's, you know, we in the Middle East or UAE at that point, there was a resource here that I don't think we're actually tapping into. And you know, it's an opportunity to connect people together. If we're going to really look at economics, how can we really connect it together and something that is beneficial for everybody? So we had conversations and we had discussions, and we was looking at the media, and it's like, what is it can we do? So anyway, the three of us sat down and we thought about, well, you know, somebody, you know, one of the co-founders, Marshall, said to me about, you know, you're the host on gotkushTV, you know, the Black Economic Show. So then, you know, what can that look like here in the UAE? And I was like, well, I'm not really sure. But what I did do, I invited them both onto the gotkushTV Odeya to kind of give them a taste of what, when we're talking about connecting and group economics, what it could look like. They loved the concept. And what was happening, they had so many people asking them questions about, how did you get to the UAE? What was it like in the UAE? How can we connect, and so forth? So from that event, and thank you gotkushTV for inviting them on, and thank you also for making me the host, because from that experience, the Black Economic Collective was born. And I just want to say thank you for that. So in regards to the Black Economic Collective, EMA, so it is a solution-based network initiative, and we're based in the UAE, Dubai, UAE. And myself, Marcin McLeod, and Leanne Beckett, we are all entrepreneurs in our own right. We, you know, but we've decided that for us to really support, to connect, to make a difference, we were going to pool our resources, pool our networks together. But one of the things that we wanted to do in relation to the Black Economic Collective, I think, was the common bond. We wanted to have a group of like-minded businessmen and women that had a connection to the African continent, no matter where they are. So even when we speak about the EMA region, we actually added another A, because one of our affiliates, UAE Africa, was like, hold on, but I'm from America, so how can I connect with this? So, you know, it's a case of, well, okay, so we'll make it a double A. But the BEC, for short, was created to facilitate and support the growth of like-minded men and women, businessmen and women. Those who you've probably been in business for at least 6 months, you know, micro businesses, those people that wanted to see a change take place in our communities. But I think it was also important for us that those could also identify as those in the African diaspora, and also be able to identify, to connect back home. That is what is very, very central and important. So when we speak about the BEC, EMA, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Americas, we're talking about men and women that choose and want to do for self. But at some point in that development, there needs to be a connection back to Africa. So through BEC, we develop an initiative that helped to each individuals to grow financially, to create jobs, community development, empowerment of Black communities. Because, you know, one of the things about living out here, you know, it can be a bit remote. You know, you're watching the news and it's not quite affecting you here as per se. There is a ripple effect, but the communities here and how it's governed doesn't allow for certain things to happen like would probably happen in the rest of the world. But the thing that we do have here is that people want to connect. People in the UAE want to connect to those in Europe. Those in Europe want to connect with those in the UAE. UAE wants to connect, or the Middle East wants to connect with those in Africa. Those in Africa, and that is what we're talking about here. And it kind of goes back to what I said before. Once you come out of the UK, and I keep going on to about the UK. That's because that's where I was born and bred. And you know, it's the world is now your oyster. And one of the things that I would also say about this whole lockdown, again, it's allowed us to recalibrate again. You know, it's during that period, you know, I was on lockdown. I mean, in the UAE, you know, when they say lockdown, it means lockdown. It's not like what's going on in the UK. When you're at home, you're at home. If you go out, you get fined. Yeah. So, you know, lockdown here means lockdown. So I spent a lot of time watching the news, but at the same time, I actually filtered a lot of it out. But because during that period, you know, it was time to think, it was time to reflect, it was time for growth on a mental, physical, spiritual. You know, those of you who know me, you know, my spirituality is I'm a Thomas Karastian. So we had a lot of opportunities to develop ourselves inwardly, to develop ourselves, to get ready for this new normal. So, you know, so even in this lockdown, you know, I know there's been a lot of stresses, and you know, I unfortunately lost a few dear friends and also family members during this period. But even in that, you know, there is an opportunity for growth, to go inwards. And you know, as I said before, it's about recalibrate. It's about thinking differently now. The world has changed. The world will never be as it was before. But for us, this is an opportunity. We've had so many challenges. We've had so many hardships that when I was, you know, looking at social media, I saw so many brands. People were doing some amazing things all over the world in that short space of time. So we know we can do this. So with the Black Economic Collective, we're about how can we create a platform to nurture that. So our vision is to create a collective economics ecosystem where we create opportunities for people to connect. And the beautiful thing right now is that online, you know, it's being online has connected the world. Because even now, I'm in the UAE. We have others in Africa. We have others in America, and so forth and so forth. Whereas before, you know, the impossible has become possible now. And that is an opportunity for us. And we should run for this. We should run with this. So that ecosystem that was challenging for people before is no longer a challenge. There is really no excuse now for us. There isn't. So many things has happened during I mean, I say as a statement, Black Lives Matter, not as an organization, okay? But even in the lockdown, the world has changed. This is time for us to move and run with it. Just run with it. So our mission is to foster sustainability. And what is that going to look like? We want to upskill people. We want to create more opportunities. So, even currently right now, we're part of an initiative in UAE Africa that's supporting those women on the continent to upscale their business. I'm talking about women that are doing fantastic things, and we're connecting them to the UAE. And via your UAE, we're also looking for opportunities to connect people in Europe as well. So it's about unification. It's about education. It's about understanding opportunities. What do they look like? We're working with some international trainers and speakers and businessmen and mentors to support our businesses throughout these regions. And it's, as I said, it's not going to be for everybody. It's really for those men and women, those businessmen and women that want to connect back home, because the ultimate goal for us is to go back home. That's the ultimate goal for all those who are part of this. So I just wanted to, before I start to wrap up, I wanted to also just bring attention to our logo and a beautiful sister. We just gave her the concept of Beck, and she came up with this logo. And I just wanted to kind of explain this because it kind of embodies what we also represent. Because the color black and the universal black consciousness, the innate, that higher self. You know, you speak about, you know, the woman of power, and that's that innate, that's that inner being, that is that consciousness that we have, and that connection, that through that connection to our motherland. The netting represents our collective unity and strength, and that is something that I've learned here in the Middle East. You know, it's the strength and the unity, but that also that common bonds that we have, that love, the abundance that we have for each other, but the things that we also know, but within that, there's so much we can do. The platinum that you see there is the royalty, the wealth, and the prosperity. You know, it goes back to, you know, historically, we were people of renown. We can go back to that. There's no reason why we cannot. And in the middle, you see a picture, and it's the planet Earth. And, you know, I know it's small, but on the front of it is Africa. And it's about those from the diaspora working together to really get, you know, to raise Africa back to its rightful place. We are the children, you know, we're scattered all over this planet, but we have a wealth of resources and so much that we can bring back and connect with those families back in Africa. There is no reason why we cannot. So through our EMA initiatives, we have sector-specific workshops, whether it's fashion, whether it's trade, whether it's logistics. We also look at financial literacy, because people now need to be thinking about legacy. It's not just about us now, it's about what we leave for the future. It's like when we have made the transition, what do we leave for the children? So it's about planting that seed. It's about what can we do now to support the growth and economic stability for our families, not just our children, but our children and the whole community. There's going to be a themed conference to be announced soon. There's going to be abundance of investment opportunities through BEC and our affiliate partners within our EMA region. We also have something what we call the BEC Boost, where we spotlight businesses and entrepreneurs, not just in the UAE, but also in the EMA regions. We provide mentorship programs and international expert trainings to support all our members in our initiative. So just to kind of close, I know I've kind of gone on for quite a bit, but I'm just so passionate. I can't explain the opportunities and abundance that have presented itself to all of us during this period that we call the lockdown. And it's about running with that opportunity, seeing what the opportunities are. So if you'd like to partner with us, to connect with us, have more opportunities about the training programs, connect to our website. You can also connect with us on our Instagram page. But what I would like to end with is something, from the Honourable Marcus Garvey. People with that knowledge of their past, history, origin, culture is like a tree without roots. And on that note, I'd like to say thank you.
Give thanks, sis. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. It sounds amazing. I really connected with what you said about your concept of what it means to be Black. It's so different when you leave the UK and you enter other spaces where there's different there's people from different countries. You're in a different country, or you're in a country where there's other Black people from different places, and you realise what connects you more than what separates you. And the whole narrative of your Blackness is completely different, and it's almost a relief to have that experience. Because I went to Ghana, Nigeria, and Egypt end of last year, beginning of this year, and it's reminding me of the first time I went to Jamaica and woke up in the morning, I went and I saw Black people everywhere, and just a different experience. And just that it's almost affirming in so many ways. And also the point that you made about the opportunity to explain your culture to everybody else, to other people who don't know what your culture is and haven't had a chance to have stereotypes or, you know.
Of course, it brought opportunities to break that down, to break those barriers, to break those things that keep us apart.
Yeah,
We need to look for things that connect us now.
Yeah,
that's what we need.
So yeah, man, thank you for sharing that, sis. I mean, I hope everybody gets to experience what you've experienced and what I've experienced, and to know what it feels like to be taken out of the box that we have been put in by European, you know, white supremacist, you know, structures about what it means to be black, and you know, have that feeling. You know, it's a beautiful thing. So give thanks, sis, for your presentation.